Hey, how goes it? Goes pretty good here. It's kind of up and down, but you know, the overall report is quite good. A steady rise overall. All right, so I have a journal for you from 9/12, the second one of that day. Uh-oh, kitty took a tumble. Mayan day 9, Serpent. And it's got 5 kick butt links. So I hope you'll click over to the written journal so that you can get the live links. Okay, this is something new. I come to this journal with the title already chosen. Feels pretty strange, as I've gotten used to not knowing that. Responsibility to joy. What's here? It's only the very most useful, helpful, positive thing you could do to follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell put it. Be in joy. Now, that takes a bit of self-discipline, as we've all been taught that this is selfish and small, that we're here to serve and please others. I don't think so, but that's our training when our bodies are small. So, let's enter deeply into our center now, into heart, and have another look at why joy could be said to be the purpose, your chosen purpose for this life. As I think it will be obvious to all, it's pretty clear that certain beliefs need to be set aside in order to take this journal journey. So I hope you'll be willing to do that. Remember, such things can always be picked up again later if that's your desire. So have no fear. This is also a journal about Abraham-Hicks and their teachings. My journey with that. A few years ago, when I first encountered them, I was fascinated. It seemed clear that Esther was actually channeling some sort of higher dimensional consciousness, and yet I was a bit put off by how willing they appeared to delve deeply into the nitty-gritty of 3D life, into the details. I found that odd. So, after following the teachings for a while, listening to a lot of them, at a certain point, I pulled back. It's not that I felt negative about them or their teachings. I felt I couldn't rightly evaluate them, and due to my concerns, I just set their teachings aside, tabled them, so to speak. Not going against them, just going away. One of the biggest reasons I pulled back was my concern over them encouraging people to want things. As a mystic who was deeply into surrender and the like, well, that just didn't sit well with my then current set of beliefs. It just didn't fly. What about non-attachment, right? Where and how does that fit in? So, for a year or more, I left their teachings aside. I forget how I got back into them, but I did recently. Maybe someone sent me a link. Anyway, I find more clarity in my now here around them. So I thought I'd share some of the fruits of that, and perhaps it'll resonate with someone else. I'm linking you to the perfect Abraham video on this issue of them encouraging the wanting of things. As you'll find in viewing it, perhaps we've been interpreting this from our own perspective, not necessarily seeing into theirs, which in this video they clarify for us. It just depends on what we want, doesn't it? What if it's more clarity more joy, or tighter and deeper experience of union with Source or Prime Creator? What if we want peace or serenity? These things are just as worthy to want as things that fill up the shelves. Our wants will depend entirely on who we are and on our perspective of where we're headed. Now, there's something else I'd like to say about these teachings. Yes, I find them to be fantastic in their own way and quite full of worthy gems. I don't, however, find them to be any sort of a final resting place, nor do they say that they are that. Instead, I find them as a nice interlude in my earthly journey. No matter what our perspective, we all have something to gain from them. So let it be a spot along the way, a part of the joy of your journey, if you like. Abraham can certainly teach us all the most effective ways to get out of the dumps. They have some very practical gifts to offer, and it's up to us to take advantage of them. I love the way they say words don't teach, only your experience does. Once upon a time, I was judging them as being somehow less than perfect, not the highest path around. I don't look at them that way now. There's nothing wrong with everything just being what it is. They don't promise to be the highest possible path, to have any sort of ultimate teachings. I never heard Esther or Jerry say anything like that either. So, why should we judge them that way? Or rather, why should I? That's the question I must ask and ferret that out, for any tendency to judge, I find, always tracks back to mind. And it's also a place where I have failed to take all of my power back from something external. If it's a violation of self and now here in heart, if it doesn't feel right compared to that, then it's something to watch, to observe. We project our own understanding on all the things we perceive. It's clear that my judgment of their teachings as encouraging the wanting of physical things was my own projection, not purely what they teach. And this is the gem I find in the heart of every judgment I catch myself making. Each judgment is an illustration of something about self and has little to do with the thing being judged. Now, that's a little off-putting, I'll admit, especially at first. We just don't want to hear that whatever it is we are judging is not out there, it's actually within the source of it. So, who is it who wants news like this? Well, it's the light beings, of course. While it might not be our favorite cup of tea yet, we all honor and value truth, being willing to accept that in whatever guise it appears. Often, someone has to point these things out to us, though, as they go so much against the grain of the way we were taught, of our habits, and often against current beliefs. And yet, to the extent that we're surrendered, that we hold things lightly, it is no longer a chore to be open enough to entertain any possibility. Now, this is especially so for those who also believe one of my favorite and most powerful beliefs, that simply anything is possible. Such beliefs smooth the way through some difficult waters. Change. We're in a process of really intense change. At least I am. I can speak for myself. And at this point, I'll admit that I jokingly Look forward to 2016 and 2017, for it won't be until then that the Pluto and Uranus square will move on, as Uranus moves faster than the ex-planet Pluto. It'll be decades before they go into aspect again, and this square aspect is pretty tough. I bet the next major aspect will be a trine, though, which will be interesting too for those who are around at that time. Now, perhaps my favorite part of what Abraham teaches is to be aligned with what they call the vortex, but you could call it higher self. I love how they suggest we don't make a move of any significance unless and until we are aligned with that, for it's just counterproductive. This is how we feed the precise opposite of what we're reaching for without being aware of doing that. What would life be like if simply everyone followed the golden rule? Can you imagine it? And what if we had some influence over that? Would we want to use it, that influence? When we are aligned with Source or Heart or the vortex, whatever, we serve all that is, the whole cosmos and beyond. Do remember, we are all connected and we're all energy. All is one, which can be seen in either the fractal or the hologram. No matter how many pieces you cut it into, each one still contains the whole thing. Well, that is us. So, let me take it a little bit farther. To be in alignment with heart is to be in a beautiful space where peace and joy and contentment abide. Our feeling of joy is actually an indication that Source is in agreement with us in that moment. Alignment with Source always feels good. One could say joy is a natural experience of that alignment. So being in the vortex is being in alignment with both Source and joy. It is to be focused as self and now here in heart. It not only lifts your vibration, but also everyone with whom you come in contact. They are lifted as well. So, without saying a thing, you've had an impact on those both near and far, just by following your own bliss. And I don't just mean physical contact, because we have mental and emotional contact with folks too. You think of them, you're in contact. Who among us has sufficient heart vision to see joy as what amounts to their purpose in life? I can, and I know I'm not alone. What this does naturally is to bring to the fore all my beliefs that may go against adopting this one as a belief. I've been working my way through those for some time, and it feels nicer and nicer and easier to align with that joy. I am so grateful. One of the biggest ones that comes up for most is guilt. Guilt at behaving so selfishly. Well, that one won't last long once it is seen. It's easy to dump. I've come to see how Abraham's teaching is also very useful about negative emotion of any kind. They view that as a simple communication, an internal communication that we're not in alignment with Source on whatever that's about, whatever we're looking at. So in that way, even negative emotion is quite positive. Now, I've sung this song myself before, but it's nice to hear it from Abraham. It's our hint to get back into heart or the vortex, these negative emotions, so we can be grateful for them. So, what if your whole purpose in life was to be joyful? Could you adopt that as a belief? When I'm not sure about something like this, I often take it out for a test drive. There's no harm in trying something out. We have nothing to fear. Our motives are pure and our intentions the best. And we can tell by how we feel just how in or out of alignment we are. This is where Abraham-Hicks comes into best usage, for we all get out of sync with our core. They provide endless ways to help us find our way back in. We came here for joy, my friends. We came here to immerse ourselves in the 3D experience, where there is both joy and the contrast of what we can call the negative emotions, but they are no more negative than the negative pole of electricity, and just as necessary to the flow at that. Much of what we're doing as we make the great shift is learning to take a different perspective on things. At least that's what I've found. So many things we were taught to judge, to view as bad or less, turn out to be good when our angle of vision is shifted. And so many things we were taught were good are not necessarily that. Sometimes it seems that there's no end of the lies we're discovering in the guise of the childhood truths we were taught. Well, even this is good, my friends. It's all good. Hey, we're discovering those lies, right? Who among us wants to go on believing in lies when the truth is just as available, only maybe a bit harder to take? Hey, we're up to it. Our first love is truth. Many of us. I know I'm one. Some people may think I'm a Pollyanna, one who believes everything is impossibly wonderful. I hope you'll be open to recognize in that your own perspective. When we align with higher self or the vortex, everything does look impossibly wonderful, and so very possible too. Just like we look away from mind as if it's a link that we're not going to click, we can look away from what's negative. If you will let your whole focus and mission be to be in joy, and do it consistently for as little as, let's say, 1 week, I believe you'll see a significant, or at least a noticeable shift in your perspective on things. And I think you'll be pleased too. While others may not understand you or what you're doing, it's good to recall that that's their right, and just walk away from as much of it as you can, rather than lowering your frequency to engage it. Another link you just don't click. If you believe life is meant to be pain and suffering, then guess what? You're correct. If you believe life is all about joy, you are also correct. It's time and past time to recognize the awesome power and action of belief and simple thought. Time to take our power back and choose the life we want to create, rather than accept the current model that society foists upon us. We will quite naturally be walking away from the herd in this process. If we're ready to take this step, it won't be all that difficult. We can remember what Abraham says about not taking any action unless and until we're in the vortex. I think that's great advice. Otherwise, we just dig ourselves deeper in the midst of thinking we're digging ourselves out. Funny how that works. yet one more backwards thing about the 3D realm. Namaste, and joy be unto you and yours.